The 7 psychological traps that steal your life. Close your eyes for a moment. Think about where you spent your day today. Not physically. Anyone can tell you they were at work, at home, in the car. I'm asking about something different. Where were you really? Where did your mind live? What invisible room did you inhabit while your body went through the motions? Because here's what most people never realize. There are places in this world that have nothing to do with geography. They're not on any map. You can't find them by looking out a window. These places exist entirely in your mind, in the way you arrange your thoughts, in the invisible structures you build around your inner life. And they're destroying you. Not quickly, not obviously, but slowly, quietly, like a house settling into a foundation that was never quite right. You feel exhausted for no reason, anxious about everything, hollow in a way you can't explain, and you blame yourself. You think something's wrong with you, but what if the problem isn't you at all? What if you're simply living in the wrong psychological neighborhood? I want to tell you about 7 places that erase who you really are, not through violence or force, but through something far more dangerous. They make you forget yourself. They teach you to abandon your own nature. They convince you the mask matters more than the face beneath it. The first place, the Hall of Mirrors. Picture a room where every wall is a mirror, but these mirrors don't show you as you are. They show you only what you already believe. Every conversation you have confirms what you think. Every opinion matches your own. Every fear you carry is validated and amplified by voices that sound remarkably like yours. Sounds comfortable, doesn't it? That's exactly why it's so dangerous. The human mind isn't meant to live in perfect agreement with itself. It's meant to be challenged, tested, stretched like a muscle. When you surround yourself only with people who think exactly as you do, something strange happens. Your mind doesn't grow stronger. It grows rigid, brittle, afraid. I once knew a man who spent all his time with people who shared his exact views on everything. Politics, religion, how to raise children, what to think about people different from him. He thought he was being wise, staying with his own kind. But what he didn't realize was that his capacity to think was shrinking every day. His world became smaller, more frightening, more dependent on the group to tell him what was real. The problem with the Hall of Mirrors is that it makes you terrified of different ideas. A new thought feels like an attack. A different perspective feels like betrayal. You become so fused with your beliefs that questioning them feels like dying. So you cling tighter to the mirrors, demanding they show you only what you want to see. But here's what you must understand. When you live in the Hall of Mirrors, you're not really thinking at all. You're just repeating. You're not growing. You're calcifying. You're not becoming more yourself. You're becoming less. The way out? Deliberately seek voices that disturb you, not to argue, not to prove them wrong, but simply to feel your mind stretch, to remember what it's like to not know, to wonder, to question even your most sacred certainties. The second place, the arena of comparison. This is where you measure your worth against everyone else's achievements, their status, their possessions, their highlight reels. In this place, nothing you do is ever quite enough, because someone, somewhere, has always done it better, faster, more impressively. The arena disguises itself as motivation. We tell ourselves that comparing ourselves to others will inspire us to improve. But watch what actually happens. You don't become inspired. You become exhausted. Every achievement feels hollow. because it's not as good as someone else's. Every success is immediately followed by, "But what about them?" I remember a woman who got a promotion she'd been working toward for years. Instead of feeling joy, all she could think about was her colleague who'd been promoted to an even higher position. Her accomplishment meant nothing because someone else had accomplished more. She'd given away her power to feel satisfied with her own life. The arena is built on a fundamental confusion. It treats life like a race with a single finish line, as if there's some objective scoreboard ranking all of humanity. But this is nonsense. Your life is not comparable to anyone else's. You're not in competition with the rest of humanity. You're on your own path, playing your own game. When you live in the arena of comparison, you stop pursuing what brings you joy and start chasing what brings recognition. You stop listening to your desires and start performing for an imaginary audience. You become so busy keeping score that you forget to actually live. The escape requires something radical. Stop measuring altogether. Not occasionally, completely. Learn to do things simply because they delight you, not because they'll impress anyone. Recover the child's capacity to play without keeping score, to create without needing applause, to exist without constantly calculating your rank. The third place, the theater of masks. This is where authenticity is punished and performance is rewarded. Here you learn to show only the parts of yourself that are acceptable, impressive, useful. Everything else gets hidden behind a carefully constructed facade. We all wear masks to some degree. This is natural, even necessary. You don't bare your soul to the grocery clerk. But the theater of masks is different. Here, the mask becomes so thick, so permanent, that you forget there was ever a face beneath it. I knew a man who worked somewhere that showing any weakness meant career death. He learned to laugh at jokes that weren't funny, to agree with ideas he opposed, to hide every part of himself that didn't fit the approved image. After years of this performance, something terrifying happened. He no longer knew who he really was. The mask had become the only identity he could recognize. This is what the theater does. It doesn't just hide your true self, it erases it, slowly, imperceptibly, until one day you reach for yourself and find nothing there. You've become a hollow performance, a walking costume with no one inside. The most insidious part is how exhausting it becomes. Every interaction requires careful calculation. What can I say? What must I hide? How should I appear? You come home drained, not from genuine engagement, but from the constant effort of being someone you're not. And here's the cruel joke. The very thing you're trying to achieve through performance, connection, belonging, acceptance, can only be found through authenticity. The performance creates exactly the isolation it's trying to avoid. You become surrounded by people who don't really know you, relationships that feel strangely empty, receiving approval that means nothing because it's not really for you. The way out requires courage. You must begin taking off the mask. Carefully at first, testing to see who stays and who leaves. Yes, some people will leave, those who preferred your performance to your reality. But this isn't loss. This is liberation. Because the people who remain and the new ones who arrive will be in relationship with you, not with your costume. The fourth place, the room of silence, not the good kind of silence, not contemplative stillness where wisdom grows. This is toxic silence where pain is buried, needs are denied, and truth is too dangerous to speak. Many of us grew up in families that operated like this. Everything looked fine on the surface. No screaming, no obvious dysfunction. But beneath the pleasant facade, everyone was slowly suffocating. Feelings weren't expressed. Problems weren't addressed. The unspoken rule was simple. Don't rock the boat. In the room of silence, you learn that having emotional needs is selfish, that expressing pain is weakness, that the way to maintain peace is to never be honest about what hurts. You become skilled at suffering quietly, at pretending everything's fine, at convincing yourself numbness is the same as peace. But here's what actually happens. Your emotional needs don't disappear when you ignore them. They accumulate in your body, in your nervous system, creating anxiety you can't explain and depression that seems to come from nowhere. You feel lonely even when surrounded by family because no one is really seeing you. You're all performing this elaborate dance of not noticing each other's pain. I knew a family that prided itself on never fighting. They thought this meant they were close, but when I talked to them individually, each person felt desperately alone. The mother was depressed but couldn't say so. The father was overwhelmed but had no one to tell. The children learned their feelings were inconvenient disruptions to the family's carefully maintained image of perfection. The room of silence teaches you to cope with pain rather than heal from it. It trains you to ask, how can I better tolerate this hurt? Rather than, how can I address what's actually wrong? The way out requires breaking the silence gently but firmly, saying out loud the things that have been hidden, not with anger or blame, but with simple honesty. I'm hurting. I need help. This isn't working for me. It means risking the false peace for the possibility of real connection. The fifth place, the storm of noise. This is the opposite of toxic silence. Here you're bombarded constantly with information, stimulation, demands, distractions. There's always something to read, something to watch, something requiring your attention. You fill every quiet moment with activity because stillness feels unbearable. This place existed long before smartphones and social media. It's anywhere you use external noise to avoid internal truth. Reading the newspaper obsessively to avoid thinking about your marriage. Staying endlessly busy with social engagements to escape your own company. Filling your mind with other people's problems so you don't have to face your own. The storm of noise is seductive because it feels productive. You're staying informed, staying busy, staying engaged. But watch what happens to your mind in this place. You consume enormous amounts of information but retain almost none of it. You have opinions about everything but deep understanding of nothing. You're exhausted from constant mental activity, but can't point to anything you've actually accomplished. I once knew a man who read 3 newspapers every morning and spent evenings in endless discussions about current events. He prided himself on being well informed, but when I asked what he truly understood, what wisdom he gained from all this consumption, he had nothing to say. He'd been filling his mind with noise to avoid the silence where real thinking happens. The storm keeps you in constant reaction. You're always responding to the latest thing, the newest crisis, the most recent outrage. There's no time for contemplation, for integration, for allowing experiences to settle into understanding. Without that settling, nothing you learn actually becomes part of you. It just passes through, leaving you feeling full but somehow still empty. The way out is frightening because it requires turning off the noise and sitting with whatever arises. At first, Anxiety floods in. All the things you've been avoiding rush to the surface. This is why you kept the noise going. But if you can stay with the discomfort, something remarkable happens. Your mind begins to clear. Your thoughts become your own again. You start to hear that quiet inner voice the storm had drowned out. The sixth place, the Chamber of Self-Betrayal. This is where you systematically abandon your own truth, your own needs, your own instincts. It happens so gradually you don't even notice. You say yes when everything inside you screams no. You stay in situations that drain you because leaving feels too difficult. You choose what's expected over what's authentic, what's safe over what's true. In the chamber of self-betrayal, you become skilled at ignoring yourself. Someone asks what you want, and you genuinely don't know because you've spent so long considering only what others want, what seems practical, what will avoid conflict. Your gut instincts, which were once clear and strong, become faint whispers you've learned to disregard. I knew a woman who spent 20 years in a career she didn't care about, married to a man she didn't love, living in a city that depressed her. When I asked why, she said it was what made sense. Her family approved. The job was secure. The marriage was stable. She'd built her entire life on what seemed reasonable to everyone else while completely ignoring what felt right to her. This is what the chamber does. It convinces you that maturity means ignoring your desires. That responsibility means betraying your truth. That being a good person means abandoning yourself. So you make 1,000 small compromises, each one barely noticeable, until you wake up one day and realize you're living someone else's life entirely. The cruelest part is that society often rewards self-betrayal. You're called mature when you ignore your needs, responsible when you sacrifice your happiness, selfless when you put everyone else first. But this isn't virtue. This is slow spiritual death. You cannot love others authentically while betraying yourself. You cannot give from an empty well. The way out requires something that may feel selfish at first. You must begin checking in with yourself again. What do I actually want? What does this feel like in my body? What is my truth, regardless of what others expect? And then, most frightening of all, you must begin making choices based on these answers. Some people will be disappointed. This is inevitable. But your life belongs to you, not to their expectations. The seventh place, the basement of shadows. This is the internal space where you've locked away all the parts of yourself you're too afraid or ashamed to face. Every painful memory, every shameful thought, every quality you've decided is unacceptable. Down into the basement they go. You might think this sounds like a good strategy. Push down the bad stuff and focus on being good. But here's what actually happens. What you bury doesn't stay buried. It grows stronger in the darkness, influencing your behavior in ways you don't understand. You find yourself overreacting to small things, sabotaging your own success, repeating patterns you swore you'd never repeat, and you can't figure out why, because the real cause is locked in the basement. I knew a man who despised his father's anger and swore he'd never be like that. He prided himself on being calm and controlled, but then he had children, and to his horror, he found himself raging at them over tiny things. He'd locked his own anger in the basement, thinking he'd gotten rid of it. But it had simply been waiting in the dark, gathering strength, until it burst out in exactly the way he feared. This is what the basement of shadows does. Every quality you reject in yourself doesn't disappear. It goes underground and starts running your life from the unconscious. You judge others harshly for traits you secretly fear in yourself. You attract situations that force you to confront what you've been avoiding. You become literally possessed by the parts of yourself you refuse to acknowledge. But here's the remarkable thing. The shadow basement doesn't just contain what you fear. It also holds tremendous power, creativity, and vitality. That anger you buried might become passionate advocacy once you face it. That sadness might become deep empathy. That shame might become fierce compassion for others who struggle. The way out requires dissent, not avoidance, not denial, but the courage to go down into the darkness with a light and see what's actually there, not to judge it, not to fight it, but simply to acknowledge it. Yes, this is also part of me. And in that acknowledgement, the shadow loses its power to control you unconsciously. You become whole again, integrated, no longer at war with yourself. The way out. So here we are. 7 places that destroy your true self. The hall of mirrors that makes you rigid and afraid. The arena of comparison that makes your achievements meaningless. The theater of masks that erases your authentic face. The room of silence that buries your truth. The storm of noise that drowns your inner voice. The chamber of self-betrayal where you abandon yourself gradually, and the basement of shadows where you hide from your wholeness. But recognizing these places is only the beginning. The question now is, how do you leave? The answer is both simple and terrifying. You must become conscious. You must look honestly at where you are, not where you pretend to be, not where you wish you were, but where you actually spend your psychological time. Which of these places do you inhabit daily? And then you must begin to leave, not all at once, not dramatically, but deliberately. Start limiting your time in toxic environments. Set boundaries with people who demand your mask. Create space for silence where your inner voice can speak. Make small choices based on your own truth rather than external expectations. Begin the slow work of integrating what you've hidden in the basement. This won't make you popular. People who are comfortable in these places will feel threatened by your departure. They'll call you selfish for setting boundaries, weird for being authentic, antisocial for needing silence, irresponsible for following your truth. Let them. Your freedom is worth their discomfort. And here's what you'll discover on the other side. When you leave these dangerous places, you don't just feel better, you become different. Your relationships deepen because they're based on truth rather than performance. Your work becomes meaningful because it comes from your authentic self. Your mind clears because it's no longer filled with noise and comparison. You feel alive again because you've stopped abandoning yourself. But perhaps most importantly, you give others permission to leave too. When you stop participating in these toxic patterns, you create an opening for others to escape. Your family might begin speaking truth. Your friends might remove their masks. Your workplace might become more human, not because you preached at them, but simply because you showed them another way is possible. These dangerous places persist because we collectively agree to inhabit them. But when enough individuals choose freedom, the whole system shifts. One person's liberation creates ripples that spread far beyond what you can see. So ask yourself right now, which of these places have you called home? Where are you spending your psychological energy? What would it take to leave Because here's the beautiful truth: you are not stuck. These places have no walls except the ones you believe in. The hall of mirrors? Walk toward a different voice. The arena of comparison? Stop keeping score. The theater of masks? Take off the costume. The room of silence? Speak your truth. The storm of noise? Turn it off. The chamber of self-betrayal? Choose yourself. The basement of shadows? Descend with curiosity instead of fear. Your true self is not destroyed. It's simply been buried under layers of accommodation, performance, and fear. But it's still there, waiting patiently for you to remember who you actually are beneath all the costumes and compromises. The meaning of your life is not to successfully navigate these dangerous places. The meaning is to recognize them, leave them, and discover what remains when you're no longer defending, performing, or hiding. What remains is you, the real you, the one who was always there, watching, waiting, ready to live again. And when you find that self, you'll wonder how you ever mistook these prisons for homes. You'll see clearly that freedom was always available, always just one honest choice away. The door was never locked. You were simply afraid to open it. But now you know. The 7 dangerous places exist, yes. But so does the way out. And the way out begins with seeing where you are, admitting it honestly, and taking one small step toward truth, not tomorrow, not when conditions are perfect, but now, always now. This is your invitation, not to perfection, not to some distant achievement, but to the simple act of coming home to yourself, to living from your center instead of from fear, to playing your own music instead of dancing to someone else's tune. The dangerous places will always be there, offering their false comforts and familiar prisons. But you don't have to accept the invitation. You can choose differently. You can walk out of the hall of mirrors and into genuine conversation. You can leave the arena and pursue what actually brings you joy. You can remove the mask and risk being seen. You can break the silence and speak your truth. You can turn off the noise and listen to yourself. You can stop betraying yourself and start honoring your own knowing. You can descend into the basement and integrate your shadows. This is not easy work, but it is the only work that matters. Because what good is a life spent in these places? What's the point of surviving if you've lost yourself in the process? Your true self is calling, not from some distant future, but from right here, right now. Beneath all the layers of protection and performance, it's been waiting for you to remember, waiting for you to come home. The question is, will you answer?